Good evening all, welcome to an Oz Cyclone Chasers update tonight, the 29th of December 2013, bordering on the 30th of December 2013, depending on where you are in Australia. Apologies that this update is coming to you late. I'm currently in the middle of a camping trip and attempting to do these updates whenever I have coverage. So at this point in time I have coverage, so unfortunately it is later than normal, but that's the best I can do for now. Alright folks, so in front of you there on your screen is the latest Bureau of Meteorology track map issued at 9:20 p.m. WA time, which is only about half an hour before this update is being done. And you can see here that we're expecting a Category 3 tropical cyclone to make landfall west of Port Hedland, between Port Hedland and Karratha pretty much. Now, the key here is what time. Now, the time you can see on your screen, 8 p.m. December the 30th. That Category 3 cyclone is almost on the coast. That is not good news for the storm surge, and the storm surge is the issue here. It's not good news for the storm surge because the high tide mark is around that 9 o'clock mark between the Karratha to Port Hedland area. So around 9 o'clock is a high tide of about 4.5 to 5.5 meters, depending on where you are. Now, on top of that 4.5 to 5.5 meters, anywhere east, and I do stress this, anywhere east of the system is going to suffer the worst of the storm tide or the storm surge. So it's important to understand that it's the eastern section of this cyclone that will suffer the storm surge. Both east and west will suffer the worst of the wind, but the east will suffer the worst of the storm surge, and also possibly the worst in terms of rainfall as well. Now, following on from landfall, which is going to happen sometime tomorrow night, we're going to see the system maintain intensity all the way through as it heads towards Paraburdoo and Tom Price as a Category 1 or 2 tropical cyclone. We may even see gales and possibly even damaging wind gusts around Newman as well, and it may remain a cyclone a long way into Western Australia's central interior. So this is going to be a fairly long-lived system. The good news here is that it's going to move very quickly. So what's happening is an upper level trough is about to capture it in the next 36 to 48 hours, or 24 to 36 hours, and what's going to happen is the system will move in a south or southeasterly direction very, very rapidly, and so therefore those winds around those inland areas, which aren't often built to tropical cyclone standards, Tom Price, Paraburdoo, Newman, those areas, you're not going to experience the intense winds for very long. Whereas on its approach to Port Hedland and Karratha, the system will have will be reasonably slow moving, as the upper trough hasn't quite impacted on it just yet. So the 12-hour period you can see here on the map, the 12-hour period, the system moves that far. The next 12-hour period, the system moves that far, and then the following 12-hour period, once the upper level trough captures it, system moves about twice as far. And so that's very important to note, that you're going to experience some very strong winds for a fairly lengthy period there if you're in that Port Hedland to Karratha region. And Wim Creek at this stage looks like it's right in the firing line of the eye itself. One final thing before I leave this track map with you is the fact that we're expecting to see those destructive and very destructive winds a little larger than normally what we would expect. So even though the system may cross, say, 50 to 100 kilometres west of Hedland or 50 to 100 kilometres east of Karratha, it is likely that those destructive wind gusts and possibly the very destructive wind gusts will extend as far east and west as those two major settlements. So it's very important to understand that just because the centre does not cross you does not necessarily mean that you're going to be spared the worst of the winds, and I'll show you that when we go into the high resolution model data. So the latest infrared imagery, we can see that the tropical cyclone lies pretty well in this area here, and we've got very nice outflow out here to the east of the system and following on to the north of the system, and really the only area where outflow is constricted is to the west of the system here. Other than that, we've got excellent outflow of the system, which what that means is it allows the convective thunderstorms to form, develop, grow, and then the waste products of those thunderstorms are able to be basically expelled from the center of the circulation, which allows new storms to grow. That's what we need for the system to intensify. If we overlay the latest wind shear analysis, basically the system lies just to the east of an upper level anticyclone, which you can see here. This is the upper level anticyclone. This is the actual cyclone center here. And so what we've got is the system, once again, remembering that the only place it's constricted in terms of its outflow is that western quadrant. That's no biggie, no big deal. The system will continue to intensify over the next 24 hours as it pushes in a southerly direction. Look, as it heads further to the south here, it's still got very, very low wind shear. So if we track look at its expected track over the next 18 to 24 hours, it's going to track through still 5, 10, maybe up to 15 knots of wind shear. So it still should be in very favourable conditions to further intensify between now and landfall. So the latest UK Met model data, we can see the system pushing pretty well. Every single member has it pushing just to the west of Headland, between Headland and Karratha. There are still some outliers here suggesting Karratha to Onslow, but look, they are real outliers. That's really not expected to happen. But, you know, stranger things can happen with tropical cyclones. So that entire warning area does need to be aware of the system. And also remembering that the gales and the damaging and definitely the destructive wind gusts will extend a lot further out compared to what a normal system would normally do here for WA. Similarly, for the European model, most of the model members have the system pushing west of Port Hedland. Once again, very, very tightly packed between both the UK and the EC. So we're really going to struggle to see this move off course. If it does, it's going to definitely throw the models out. None of the models are predicting any sort of surprises with this particular tropical cyclone. So once again, Karratha to Headland is the expected crossing. Tomorrow night is the expected time. Remembering the all-important time period is that 9 p.m. high tide, 9 to 10 p.m. high tide, and any time between sort of a couple of hours before and a couple of hours after, they're danger periods in terms of the storm surge. Alright, we're going to start looking at the future movement and rainfall of this system first, and then we'll talk about the wind of this system. So 2 a.m. tomorrow WA time, we're going to see most of the rain offshore, but we are starting to see showers and rain bands starting to push onto the coast to the east of Headland. But at this stage, most of that is not actually hitting the coast. Now it's around about lunchtime tomorrow, where we're going to start to see that heavy rain start to make its way onto the coast around Port Hedland. Look, anywhere west of Karratha, really not seeing any rainfall from this system as yet, at least until tomorrow lunchtime. And so as we head into tomorrow night, we're going to see obviously conditions deteriorate much faster, and by that stage we are going to see a fair bit of rain around the Karratha area, probably heading the shower activity possibly making it to Barrow Island, but most of the shower activity will be east of that. Now, the Karratha to Headland area, looking at some extreme rainfalls. You can see this red shading on your screens, and then the pink shading inside the red shading, which is like 100 millimeters plus over 6-hour period. So we're looking at massive rainfalls in that time frame. So that's tomorrow night at about 8 p.m. WA time. So we're just going to see a general increase in rainfall starting from about tomorrow, very early tomorrow, east of Headland, and then pushing along with the system towards the southwest. Now, as we track the system inland just a little bit and we move into Tuesday morning, we can see that by Tuesday morning there's still a lot of extreme rainfall happening right along that coastal fringe, in these northerly or northwesterly winds coming into the system, but we're also seeing that extreme rainfall extending a long way inland as well in the expected warning area. So that heavy rain will not be confined just to the coastal regions. It will extend inland, and you can see even way out here, still to this is on Tuesday morning, still to the east of Headland around the Pardue to Grey area, we're seeing some really heavy rain coming into this feeder band that's going to be that's going to be wrapping around the tropical low or tropical cyclone. Look, at that stage, it's still a tropical cyclone with an expected central pressure of about 960 odd hectopascals. So it's still a serious system, folks, and this is while it's about 150 kilometres inland. It's still going to be packing a massive punch. As we head to Tuesday afternoon, you can still see some extreme rainfall happening around the core of the system. The system's still around the 970 odd hectopascals to 980 odd hectopascal mark, so still about a Category 2 intensity in terms of its central pressure, but in terms of its wind gusts, it'll probably be borderline 1 and 2 by the time it's west of Newman. So you can see, folks, this is a serious system because it's going to continue. It's going to be aided by an upper level trough or a mid-level trough, and because of that, what's going to happen is that will provide some favourable conditions for it to weaken much slower than we would normally expect. So not only is this system larger than normal, it will weaken much slower than normal as it heads inland. So that was rainfall. Let's have a look at winds. Now, winds as we head into 1 a.m., around about 11 p.m., which is about when this update comes out. You can see some gale force winds starting to hit the coast east of Port Hedland. At this stage, winds are just blustery over Port Hedland. Karratha, not seeing too much wind at all just yet, just sort of that 15 moderate to fresh wind at, say, 15 to 20 knots. As we head towards Monday at 8 a.m, we start to see some intense winds starting to hit the coast between Port Hedland and Pardue, winds of around that 40 to 50 knot mark. We're starting to see maximum winds in the system of 50 to 60 knots, and those winds are at the moment offshore. Now, what we're worried about, as you know, is the storm surge, which is going to probably hit later on that evening. Judging by the model guidance at the moment, the coastal crossing is right along that high tide mark. So let's have a look at what those winds do. Karratha by 8 a.m, you're starting to look at more 25 to 30 knots, so things starting to get a little bit blustery for you by about 8 a.m. So by about 2 p.m, we're starting to see maximum winds around the core of the system of about 60 knots sustained, 60 to 70 knots possibly sustained. Starting to hit, those maximum winds are starting to actually hit Port Hedland, even though the centre of the system remains about 100 kilometres away from Port Hedland. So you're still going to see those maximum winds, or very close to those maximum winds around Port Hedland, even though the centre of the cyclone at this stage, remember, is not expected to hit Port Hedland directly. You're still going to see those strong winds. Now, the key issue here, once again, is these winds coming off the water in that direction. Those winds will drive up a storm surge. See, the winds here that Karratha is going to be experiencing are going to be coming off the land, so they're not going to create the storm surge that you're going to see in and around the actual eye, plus to the east of the eye. And here's the key time, folks. This is 8 p.m. tomorrow night, and you can see the maximum, basically the maximum intensity, maximum winds are now hitting the coast. The eye is about 5 or 10 kilometres offshore at that time. High tide is an hour after this, so you can see that once the system crosses the coast, we're going to see a fair amount of these onshore winds pushing this water, pushing this wall of water up. Now, I'm not trying to take away from the fact that 60 to 70 knot sustained winds are something to sneeze at. Look, they will create damage, but at this stage, most areas in that coastal strip are built to withstand Cat 3 standard systems. So hopefully the damage to those houses, it will be minimal. But once again, it's the debris, the loose debris of people taking this with a sense of complacency and the she'll be right attitude, which I'm sure a lot of people in the northwest have adopted because you've lived with tropical cyclones. It's those little pieces of debris that actually end up creating much larger damage in the long term, because once they become missiles, they in turn hit other things and destroy other things, and those then create more debris, and it's sort of like a snowballing effect. So that's why it's important now, if you're still going to have a little bit of time tomorrow morning to clean up the yard if you live in that Karratha to Port Hedland area, to make sure there are no such missiles in your backyard. Alright folks, so that's 8 p.m. tomorrow night. You can see that's really the key time we're worried about, is that coastal crossing between 8 and midnight. So by 11 p.m. the system is now making landfall. You can see the eye right in there, just to the about basically splitting Headland and Karratha, and you can see once again strong winds continuing here for the Headland area. The most intense winds will be west of Headland at that stage, but remember, if the track pushes slightly east between now and then, Headland will be experiencing those maximum winds. Karratha too experiencing some very strong 50 to 60 knot sustained winds. Remembering though, luckily for Karratha at this stage, the system remaining east of there, at least it's modelled to do so, and therefore the storm surge threat not great there. Conditions still not easing up by the 2 a.m. period, so it's going to be a very wild and woolly night. So even by 2 a.m. you're still seeing Karratha with 40 to 50 knot winds, Headland with 35 to 45, even possibly 50 knot winds, and you're still seeing some very, very intense winds, even though the system is now 15 or 20 kilometres inland. So it's going to be a system that will have some longevity about it. And as we head even further into the period, as we head to about lunchtime on Tuesday, and you're still seeing gales around the Port Hedland area, Karratha going back to those 20 to 30 knots, and we're still seeing 35 to 45 knot winds on the eastern side of the what's left of the cyclone, if it is indeed a cyclone at that stage. Even Newman experiencing gale force winds there as well. So those areas, Paraburdoo, and those areas around it, still need to be aware that this is going to be a reasonably serious system even when it gets to them. Alright folks, that's what we've got for you today. We'll have another update probably about lunchtime-ish tomorrow, maybe a little later, and then we'll keep you well and truly up to date every few hours as the system makes landfall. Unfortunately, Oz Cyclone Chasers, we don't have a major sponsor this year, and we don't have any advertising partners this year, so unfortunately we can't chase WA systems again this season. So I'm hoping that will change eventually as more people learn about what we do and are able to support us. But at this stage this year we will have to be sitting on the sidelines. Please though, if you are on our social media, please feel free to post videos and post photos of the area affected. We'd love to see them, and I'm sure the rest of our followers would definitely love to see them. I guess it's the next best thing for us to, instead of being out there, I guess at least we can have a look at what it does look like from our bases in Darwin and Townsville. Take care folks, stay safe, and remember, if you're in that warning area, you still have time tomorrow to prepare yourself for the onset of the extreme winds starting tomorrow afternoon and evening. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night.